Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Director of the Ronald Reagan Institute, Roger Zachaim.
Thank you, voice of God, also known as Mark Fitzpatrick. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. This day is many years in the making. 2 years ago, as almost all of you know, just as we were nearing our grand opening, a pandemic shut our doors. Months later, social unrest shattered our windows, destroying so much that it took us another year to rebuild. We were delayed, but not derailed. So it's wonderful to finally be here and officially celebrate this grand opening. Now, I first want to thank those whose name appear on the marble wall to my right, our donors and our trustees, the visionaries who made this possible. Specifically, I'd like to acknowledge our Founders Circle members assembled here today. Our trustee, Ambassador Bob Tuttle. Thank you, Bob. Trustee, Mr. Ben Sutton. Mike and Linda Kerb. Mike and Linda. Al and Denise Frank. Hi, Al and Denise. Larry Polhill. Where's Larry? And Gabby Perencio on behalf of Jerry Perencio. Thank you all so much for being part of this very important show. I also want to thank the incredible staff here at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation Institute. Your tenacity and resilience through the past 2 years, through the building and the rebuilding, have been inspiring and energizing. Thank you. To be trusted to lead the Reagan Institute is both thrilling and daunting. After all, I was not at the revolution. While the Reagan administration was fighting to cut taxes, I was struggling to cut with scissors. But perhaps that is the point of all of this. That in every movement, there comes a time when the next generation must take the torch from its founders. During another time, in another era, this theme was on the mind of a young representative from Illinois who was lecturing at the Springfield Young Men's Lyceum. The speech would become known as Abraham Lincoln's Lyceum Address. Perpetuation was on the mind of Lincoln that day. How to keep the Union's founding principles alive when the Founding Fathers' generation was passing from public life. He feared that with their loss would come a loss of fidelity to the Constitution, the rule of law, and the breakdown of the institutions those revolutionaries sacrificed so much to build. He worried that the spirit of 1776, unmoored from the founders, could lead to the breakdown of the Republic. Lincoln called the departed founders, quote, the pillars of the Temple of Liberty, and warned, quote, that temple must fall unless we, their descendants, supply their places with other pillars hewn from the solid quarry of sober reason. We find ourselves in a similar moment today. Many pillars of the Reagan era are no longer with us. Their absence has left us weaker. Here, in this city where we gather now, we've come to face with incivility, violent mobs, and less trust in our government and institutions. That is to say, America needs this institute to perpetuate and carry on the work of the Reagan Revolution. Notably, this is not a memorial or a monument. It is a living, breathing, life-sustaining venture, as dynamic as the very hot dancing LEDs behind me. Sorry about that, Fred. We'll do more than preserve the memory of President Reagan. We'll perpetuate the institutions that he strengthened. With the Reagan Institute, a new generation takes up the cause of perpetuating Lincoln's Temple of Liberty and Reagan's Shining City. And on behalf of the Reagan Institute staff, we thank you for giving us the opportunity to engage in this very noble endeavor. And now I'll turn it over to the man who has so ably steered the Reagan Foundation, who has been at Reagan's side since the White House days, our board's chair, Fred Ryan.
Thank you, Roger, for that very kind introduction. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I know we're here for one purpose, to celebrate John Highbush's birthday. John, let me say, though, in addition to celebrating John's birthday, this is a great occasion for us to celebrate his many contributions to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation over the course of several years. In fact, for the past 13 years, John has provided great vision to the foundation and has been at the center of everything that we've accomplished. And the Institute that we dedicate today is a result of more than a decade of work on John's part, and his legacy will always be a part of this. Thank you, John. Well, all of us here who've had the privilege of serving President and Mrs. Reagan can appreciate the significance of this day and what it would have meant to them. When they began making plans for their library and foundation, they decided to break the mold. They didn't do the usual model of attaching to a university, and instead, they built a presidential library on a bluff overlooking Simi Valley, perched like the shining city on the hill that President Reagan often referred to. It was his way of describing how he saw America as a beacon for those longing for freedom and as an enduring symbol of hope and promise for our nation. Most libraries and museums, by their very nature, deal with the past, right? But if it's hope and promise and longing for freedom, these are aspirations for the future. And President Reagan was always inspired by America's future, by the incredible things he knew Americans could do if they were given the opportunity and freedom to do it. That's why the vision he had for his library and his foundation was focused on ensuring that the principles that he cherished would endure for years to come. He wanted the generations that followed to understand his belief in the goodness of America and to appreciate America's unique role in the world. He hoped his fellow citizens would never forget the transformative power of freedom in all of its forms. The principles President Reagan stood for are as relevant today as they were during his years in the White House. We face, in fact, some eerily similar challenges: Russian aggression, rising inflation, a nation that doubts itself. The remedy for many of these ills, President Reagan believes, what he called informed patriotism, a national pride grounded in thoughtfulness and knowledge. That is precisely the mission of the Reagan Institute, to cultivate an informed patriotism here in our nation's capital. The library in Simi Valley has taught millions of visitors around the world about the legacy of our 40th president. This institute is meant to ensure that President Reagan's ideals and visions continue to guide men and women who will shape America in the years ahead. Through scholarly forums, leadership programs, speaker series, publications, other projects, the Reagan Institute will bring those together who have a voice in today's policymaking and help them draw inspiration from President Reagan's example. Two principles that President Reagan thought were essential here in Washington were civility and bipartisanship. He understood that keeping America free and prosperous and strong enough to foster global peace was an agenda too big and too important for one political party alone. It required the nation's leaders to reach across the aisle to put the people's interests over personal ambitions. These were principles President Reagan exemplified throughout his career in partnership with Democratic lawmakers who could be both sparring partners and genuine friends. The Reagan Institute, too, will carry forward this bipartisan spirit. In opening our doors across Lafayette Park from the White House, our goal is not to operate a shadow administration or a training ground for ideological opposition. Rather, it's a place where scholars and thinkers from across the political spectrum can come and engage with the ideas that President Reagan stood for. We're gratified that both Democrat and Republican lawmakers are part of today's celebrations. In fact, we're looking forward to hearing from Speaker Pelosi, Leader McConnell, and Leader McCarthy this evening. And we look forward to welcoming and working with representatives of both parties in advancing President Reagan's hopes for America's future. 38 years ago this week, yesterday in fact, Ronald Reagan stood on a windswept cliff in Normandy delivering one of the most famous speeches of his presidency, the address commemorating the 40th anniversary of D-Day. He spoke of the young Americans who risked everything that day, of the courage they showed in the face of impossible odds. They were inspired, President Reagan said, by a few core beliefs. They loved liberty. They were willing to fight tyranny. And they knew that some things were worth dying for, including democracy, because as he said, it's the most deeply honorable form of government ever devised by man. The 8 decades that have passed since that momentous struggle have only proven how precious liberty and democracy are, and how important it is never to waver in their defense. And that is the mission the Reagan Institute will proudly carry forward here in its new home. We hope you will be part of this effort for decades to come, and we thank you for your leadership and for your support. And now I'd like to ask the trustees to join me on this very warm stage to cut the ribbon. Sure, thank you. All right, here we go. Ben? No, I think we keep going to oops. Are these the scissors you were referring to, Roger, when you were cutting?
I'm not sure I want to stand next to you.
All right, we need to shift down a little bit more.
All right.
Yep. Yep. Come on up, Paul and Bob. Okay. Elaine, you've always been good at cutting red tape. Would you mind? Would you mind?
I think you should do the honors, and also, yeah.
All right, will you help me?
Okay, and then Mike Curb, actually, Mike. Yeah, Mike.
All right. Yeah, come on. We'll all squeeze this thing. See if the three of us strength. Oh, all right. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, Mr. Ambassador, how are you? Everybody is invited upstairs to the Sutton Family Auditorium for our reception. You've all earned a drink, at least one.